Welcome to Movies Are Life. I'm your host, Nathan Chandler, and it's Groundhog time. That's right, we're diving into the timeless classic that keeps us reliving the same day over and over and over again. Groundhog Day. This film falls at number 13 on the best rom-coms list. I'm welcoming in frequent guest and co-host of the Second Best Picture podcast, Kyle Radford. How are you doing?
I'm great, buddy. I'm feeling good. I feel like I've broken the awful Groundhog Day cycle that I've been in, coming on your show, just reliving terrible movie after terrible movie after terrible movie. It's the end of the movie, and I've woken up with you nuzzled into my chest, and it's a new day with this one.
New year 2024. I was really taking a look at things with this podcast, and I was like, what's the direction I could go? Oh, maybe Kyle would like to talk about a good movie, if not a great movie.
You would love it so much.
Yeah. So before we dig in really deep into this film, I'm assuming this is a movie that you have seen a lot before.
Yeah, I saw this in the theaters with my parents when I was 11, whenever this would have come out, and it was one of the it's one of the VHSs that we had.
Right.
So when our generation, you had about 15 or 20 VHSs, and you just watched them on repeat.
Yeah.
And then when I got too old for the Disney movies, this one really was on repeat.
Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because I was trying to think about like when I saw this film, and I mean, I could be making it up, but I feel like I too saw it in the theater. For some reason, I just have a recollection of that. And I think part of the reason is, for sure, I think the rating of this movie, it's PG. It's not even a family film, but it's, pretty accessible to kids, to watch. So it wouldn't surprise me either that I went with my parents to see this movie. Because I do remember the trailer even as a kid. You were like, as 11-year-old boy or 12 or whatever, you were suckered into the image of this groundhog behind the wheel of a truck, and you're like, this has to be great.
It's a real Kangaroo Jack situation where that is not what the movie delivered, but I didn't care. Like, I remember loving it. I mean,
me too.
It's not a kid's movie. Watching it now, it's not as silly, I think, as I remember it being. Like, I think I thought a lot of it was, I probably thought it was funnier for different reasons back then.
Yes.
Or I latched on to different things, but I loved it. But my parents, they drug me to all those, like Forever Young with Mel Gibson and that. Like,
yes, that was a VHS we owned for sure.
I remember going to see these movies in the theater with them and their friends. They just couldn't get babysitters those nights.
Yeah. We've talked on this podcast before about some of the VHS copies that we own, but Forever Young was definitely one of them. We had Out of Africa.
Oh, wow.
For some reason. Yeah. And where's some more kind of classic PG movies? It wasn't PG, but we talked about Dances with Wolves and Addams Family, because those came with the McDonald's deals. Do you remember when that was happening?
You get a VHS?
Yeah, Rudy was the big one I was trying to think of.
We didn't have Rudy. No, we didn't have that. The Superman the movie got a lot of play in our house.
Okay,
definitely Addams Family. Yeah, those are Ghostbusters 2. I don't know if we even had a copy of Ghostbusters.
Oh yeah, probably not. I don't. Yeah, come to think of it, I don't know how I saw that movie so many times, because we didn't own it, but I guess we rented it. I don't know. So, but anyway, well, I hope you got your alarm clock set on repeat, because we're about to unravel the mysteries of time loops, weather predictions, and of course, Ned Ryerson.
Weatherman Phil Connors is spending the day in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania.
Phil? Ned Ryerson. I did the whistling belly button trick at the high school talent show.
Bing!
Bang!
But Phil's about to find out he's not just stuck in Punxsutawney.
Will you be checking out today, Mr. Connors?
Chance of departure today, 100%.
He's stuck
Groundhog Day!
in Groundhog Day.
I'm reliving the same day over and over.
Phil?
Ned Ryerson?
Groundhog Day is a 1993 American fantasy comedy film directed by Harold Ramis, from a screenplay by him and Danny Rubin. Starring Bill Murray, Andy McDowell, and Chris Elliott, it tells the story of Phil Connors, played by Murray, a cynical television weatherman covering the annual Groundhog Day event in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, who becomes trapped in a time loop, forcing him to relive February 2nd repeatedly. Groundhog Day was considered a box office success on its release, earning over $105 million to become one of the highest grossing films of 1993. It also received general positive reviews. Reviewers were consistent and praised for the film's successful melding of highly sentimental and deeply cynical moments, and for the philosophical message beneath the comedy. I don't know if you know this, Kyle, but it actually won a BAFTA award for Best Original Screenplay. So
I did read that. That's crazy to me.
yeah. So in the years since its release, the film has grown in high esteem. It's considered one of the greatest films of the 1990s and one of the greatest comedy movies ever. It was also, and I think you can correct me if it's wrong. Did you see the 2016 musical?
I've seen the musical. I saw it on Broadway with the original cast. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. How was that?
It's awesome. It's great. It's a great show. Tim mentioned the music for it. He's the same guy that did the music for Matilda the musical. He's
okay.
A singing comedian. And it was, we loved it. It was one of those where we were in town for something. We're in town and we had our show we were going to see. And then usually we just go and see another one while we're there. And it was the other one we saw just because we could get tickets for it. And absolutely loved it. Still, I listen to the soundtrack to this day. It's really good.
Okay. I need to just check out the soundtrack to that. But it also, I don't remember seeing this, but it also apparently spawned a video game sequel in 2019 called Groundhog Day, like Father, like Son. I've never knew of this.
Well, you have an Oculus, right? I think it's an Oculus game.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you play as Phil Connors Jr., reliving your own time loop. But I believe it got mixed reviews, is how the website kindly put it.
Sounds like a guys' weekend game to download.
You guys want to play? I've got we can either do Remains of the Day or Groundhog Day. Which one do you guys? I've got all the new Oculus games.
Yeah. Oh, that's hilarious. So I think it's fair to say we both love this movie. Now I will say, when I first was thinking about doing this list, it popping up on this best rom-coms list, I just, in my love for this movie, I have never really considered it as a rom-com at all. Even though I also kind of think it clearly is, especially kind of watching it through this lens. But what about you? Have you ever really thought about it like that?
No, I've never really thought of it that way. I was thinking about that too, and I was like, am I going to come onto Nate's podcast with some hot take about how this isn't really a rom-com? And I mean, I guess it is, and you read up on it, and Harold Ramis really did change Ruben's script to be more of a rom-com, more mainstream in a rom-com. So I'm like, well, they did intend for it to be that way, but to me, it's more a movie about this guy, Phil Connors, and him kind of getting his life, reprioritizing his life. And then the love aspect of it, I thought was kind of second tier, but watching it in the lens of a rom-com, I don't know. The last 15 minutes is all about him and Andy McDowell's character, and seeing where he really makes the change of deciding he wants to change how he's living his life happens after she kind of it's after she falls asleep next to him, or he wakes up, or and he realizes he can't basically trick her into sleeping with him. So,
like every good guy was trying to do in the 90s,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what would you do if you could relive the same day over and over again? So yeah, I guess it is a rom-com. I've just never thought of it that way because it's so much more just about Phil.
Right. Oh yeah,
and the only barrier, the only barrier put on their relationship is that he's a jerk. So.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, I mean, I even kind of and we'll talk about the soundtrack later, but it ends with the Nat King Cole song, almost like being in love. I mean, it's kind of giving the stamp of being, for the genre, but I think just the way people viewed the movie, it just became something so much more that, people don't think about that as much.
Yeah, I think it firmly is a rom-com and one of the great rom-coms, but I don't even think of it that way.
Yeah.
Maybe that's its brilliance.
Yeah. And I liked what you said earlier. That was a good point of, the things we latched onto as a kid, because that was, I mentioned, Ned Ryerson. I mean, those moments, I just remember any any of those scenes with Ned and how he interacts with them as a kid, I just thought those were so funny, especially the time where he finally just sucks them, in the face. I mean, we would used to say that all the time, and then, the whole being line. And then, also, even though I mean, I think that scene works when Phil steals the groundhog and drives off the cliff. But the Chris Elliott, we always used to quote, like, when the truck goes off and he goes,
He might be okay. Well, no, probably not now.
We would quote that as well. That line. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
probably not now.
no, probably not. And so, yeah, those were the kind of the things I latched on to as a kid. And then, I mean, I think, as a kid, always just loved the movie. So it's something I watched all the time. And then it just kind of grew with just the deeper meanings behind everything, as you grow older. And I think that's what kind of makes this a great movie.
Well, and I also think he was more. I think I remembered him being more of a jerk. Or not a jerk. Because he is a jerk. More of a bad guy, like a villain. And he's really not. He's just kind of prickly, and he's just kind of he's a dick. Like,
well, he's a narcissist.
Yeah, he's a narcissist, but he's not like evil. Like, he's pleasant enough to people when he needs to be. He's a competent weatherman.
Yeah.
He's just kind of a jerk. And at the end, even when he's this better person, he's still kind of a sarcastic jerk. He's just a bit of a better person. So I think maybe I'm older and I know more people like that. Maybe I'm more like that myself. I'm like, hey, he's not a villain. He's just a prick.
I mean, he's just saying what he feels.
These people are the worst. They're Hicks, Rita.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of kind of when I was reading up on this, this seemed to be kind of a big turning point for Bill Murray as far as like how people saw him and maybe like, he could do more serious roles. But I think that's actually what's so brilliant about his performance is exactly what you said, is he stays the same person. By the end, it's just the outlook has changed. So he still has that sarcasm, that dry humor, but he's just redirecting it in a different way. And that's what I like about it. It's not, you actually do see the change in him and it makes sense. Wherein I think in other ways you can kind of be like, oh, that was quite a leap.
Yeah, it'd be too sticky and sweet if at the end he lost his edge and he still wasn't making his little comments or like that. Then you're in your Shallow Hal. Like, there's a movie that does like the kind of magical jerk to good person arc that is not a very good movie for plenty of reasons. But the edge gets filed off completely and it stops becoming a real person.
Right. Yeah. No, exactly. And so do you like Bill Murray in this as much as I do?
I really do. And my relationship with Bill Murray has changed a lot the older I get because you find out more about him in his public life, and he's a jerk. Like, he's a bad guy, and like he just is. And so you hear how he is on sets and all that, and so you have to separate the artist from the art, right?
Right.
But I think he's just flat out brilliant in this. The way he plays it, the way the kind of detached cynicism he has the whole time, and like I said, never letting go of that, never not being Phil. Right.
And I think the big part of getting this great performance pulled out of him is the director Harold Ramis, who's also actor. So if you don't know who Harold Ramis is, he's directed many great comedies: Caddyshack, National Lampoon's Vacation. I've always loved Analyze This. I don't know if it holds up still, but he's also actor. He was Egon and Ghostbusters. So
he wrote Animal House.
Yeah. Oh yeah, wrote Animal House. Big part of that National Lampoon family. And so Murray and Ramis, they co-starred in Stripes. They did a lot of things together. And famously, this movie just caused a major rift between them where they just didn't talk like after this movie was done. And then they apparently reconciled everything when Ramis was essentially, I think, on his deathbed in 2014. So it's just interesting that it got to that point. So I mean, there's two sides to every story, I know, but also hearing the other things like as you guys mentioned about Murray's personality on sets and stuff, it's kind of tracks. So
it is sad, but apparently they had conflicting views on how the script should be presented. Ramis more broadly comical, Murray wanted to be more philosophical, and he like took a break in the late 80s from acting for several years. For like 4 years to study like philosophy at the Sorbonne or something like that. And so he's more interested in that, I think. And I think he admitted, well, Harold was right to make it the movie that it was, but it still didn't repair their friendship until you said the very end. And I was in New York when Ramis died, and we went by the Ghostbusters firehouse, and people were laying like flowers out at the firehouse. It was very cool.
I thought you were about to say you swung by his house and
I paid my respects, and I saw Harry.
Were you able to bury the hatchet with him?
Yeah,
as well?
we finally. No, I'll never forgive that son of a bitch.
And I think it's okay to laugh at that because that's why I like Ramis so much. He had that like dark comedic sense to him, so it was funny. Like his group was like, I mean, there was more than just the Ghostbuster group, but like, Bill Murray kind of went into that break, like you were talking about. And then like Dan Aykroyd was always kind of kooky and went to this like supernatural thing. You could just see
selling vodka.
Yeah. And you could just still see Harold Ramis just getting stoned going like, what's the big deal, you guys? He was able to almost kind of construct, like he was famous, but he never had the fame that they had, but I don't think he was interested in that. I mean, did lots of directing, still like directed episodes of The Office, and I had always been a big fan of him. Although I didn't see his last movie that I heard was
Year One.
Yeah, that I heard it was notoriously pretty bad. But
everybody's I don't know. He's got some stinkers in there, but this has to be his masterpiece in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
and this is the guy that did Vacation, which is a good movie, but that's got more of an edge to it. I think this is definitely his most accessible movie for the masses, I would say. And it's really good.
Yeah, and
I don't know if you guys have got that. I like this movie.
And I think part of it that also makes it so great is, and I think this is probably something that Harold Ramis brought to it, because even though he was co-starring a lot of things, I think he could easily maybe be kind of in like categorized into the character actor type of person. And I think that's what makes this movie so good, is all the people that surround the main characters, because they're so memorable. I mean, we talked about Ned Ryerson, and even the waitress that's in there, like
Doris.
And part of it is that we see them like multiple times and stuff, but I think that's kind of what makes this movie so accessible, is like you really do feel like you're trapped in this world as well, and everybody looks like super familiar to you, and you kind of start looking like in the background of like, I like how the guys in the bowling alley, they're like in one of them's in the diner during that day. I think that's what really stands out about this.
No, the town is so real and lived in, and he's got such an eye for just casting the characters and then populating them throughout the town, and it really rewards you watching it over and over again. How sure, there's extras in the background, but it's also these actors are in the background of every scene, living their life in this small town, and you're really rewarded for that. And it reminds me of The Office, where when they would you do background scenes at The Office, or you do talking heads, it's the principal cast that has to be back there doing nothing, frittering around, pretending like they're typing on a computer. It can't just be extras that they have. And that's this movie. Like, you're at the diner scene, and it's completely not even about these characters, and they don't have speaking lines, but it's all these people that you're going to see later in the movie and that you've seen that are just in there in the background, pretending to eat a sandwich. And and it's so well done in that respect, keeping it small and insulated, and letting this community, so that it pays off so much in that last day when he's going through and interacting with all of them, and at the dance, all of them are coming up and talking about Phil and how much he's meant to them in just that one day, because you've gotten to know them over the last hour and a half.
Yeah, yeah. And I think also, I think it's brilliant how they do these, these days, these repeats, especially as he's starting to try to woo Rita and learning more about her. But, the camera movements always being the same. I've always remembered, for whatever reason, especially the one where they're in the German restaurant where it kind of begins. And I think it's subtle, but it's brilliant to start with that waitress with those two huge mugs of beer, walking. And this time I tried to kind of watch even the background actors, like you're talking about, to see how similar they move and stuff. And I think they too kind of tried to stick with that. But I think it's brilliant how when they decided to not use music, I think a lot of times it would be, kind of in the background. And I just I just like those hard cuts where we just see the scenes playing over and over, but they also know exactly when the right time to bring in the music into these little montages, like when he's getting slapped multiple times. And also when he's how he's killing himself all those different times as well. But I just think they found that good balance of everything, of when to just let the scenes play out the way they are.
Yeah, they do a really good job of setting up the vignettes and showing the passage of time. And yeah, I love so many great hard cuts in this movie.
Oh yeah, for sure. And even where that one date seems to be going really, really well, and then it doesn't end well, and she leaves, and then it goes to the next. And I think when it cuts, and I think it's also deciding when to cut into the date, and it's once again back into the snowball fight with the kids. And I love how he's just forcing
he's more manic. He's forcing the conversation the second time, and then after that it's just off the rails and you get into the slap montage.
Yeah, but I just love how he's aggressively scooting closer to her.
Hey, some kid just threw a snowball at us. Hey, come here. Let's have some fun. Come on, hey. Hey, kids, come on. I wish these were my own kids hitting me like this. Hey. Hey, ow. Are any of you up for adoption? Hey, here's a humdinger over here. Hey, wasn't that great?
And the look on her face. What are you doing? You've not earned this.
Yeah, a lot is made about this movie too, that they based this on the Kubler-Ross model of the 5 stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And they kind of use that as an outline. And I thought that was a amazing way to frame this story, for sure.
Yeah, it really tracks too, if you think about the different scenes in the movie. And I'm trying to think if I guess that's the perfect arc for the character. I mean, and why wouldn't it be in this, from denial to finally acceptance? And they play it really well. I mean, I remember as a kid loving the suicide montage thing. It's so funny.
I did too, and it kind of made me think of, we've covered the movie already, Palm Springs. Have you seen that one?
I have.
Yeah,
I'm not as high on it as you are. I think it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. And so they also, I'm almost like, how would they handle suicide? Now, with this movie or whatever like that. Cause I think it maybe I think they still handle it delicately, but yeah, I remember laughing quite a bit as a kid. I mean, it still it kind of made me laugh a little bit.
One of the problems with Palm Springs is, and I don't remember that movie that well, to be honest, is it falls into a trap that this movie doesn't. And one of the things that makes this movie so good is it tries to over explain the mechanics of why everything's happening.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
Whereas this one, it's just happening.
Yeah.
And it's so much better for the fact that it's just happening. It's just allowed to happen. He's not venturing outside of the town. We're not watching him try to escape. It is just living the same day in the town over and over again. You accept that premise, and that's what it is.
Yep. So apparently, in the special features of the DVD, Ramis stated that the original idea was for Phil to live this day for about 10,000 years, but later said that Phil probably lived in the same day for about 10 years. Do you feel like that would probably track in this kind of arc that you're seeing played out?
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that 10 years, you'd go insane. The screenwriter said he thought it'd be about 100 years too. So I don't think anyone really gave it that much thought as to how long it would be. When I was watching it as a kid before the internet, and I was trying to make up my own mind of how long it was, I always figured it was a couple years. I never thought 10,000 years. That kind of boggles the mind.
Yeah.
So I always thought like, it was 5 years, 10 years, something like that.
Yeah, I think what probably really makes you start thinking about it is framing the skill sets that he develops, like playing the piano and ice sculpting.
And it's not just that he like learns French to read her that poem, like he learns French.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and back then you didn't have all the apps,
That's my thing. Like I always wondered about like the piano lessons.
Yeah.
What was the third year of the piano lessons like, where he shows up saying like, I'm a new student and I need lessons, and it's just a day? I mean, at a certain point, doesn't he just go buy a piano? Because on the last day, the teacher's like, that's my student. And he's like a professional piano player. And he went to her house and asked for piano lessons. And then was just go to a music store, man, and play on their piano if you need to practice for an hour. You don't need to pay this lady $1,000 and have her take her student out to noodle on the piano.
That part of that scene really bothers me, that she takes such credit.
We learn a lot about it. She needs her own time loop.
Yeah. That's like me like going into like a Maroon 5 concert. I'm like, yep, I told you they had it. Yep. Like it was like, but I guess this is the same lady that did push out a little kid, so she
$1,000. That kid's parents would understand.
Hey, I was kind of like, hey, I understand totally. So I know a lot of religions have kind of latched on to this movie, kind of seeing this as an allegory. Have you ever viewed this film in that kind of deeper way?
I really haven't, I guess. I mean, no, I've almost viewed it more as even the secular way of like, appreciate what you have around you and treat people well and look out for other people.
Right. Yeah.
We're the ones that need to take care of each other. So no, I never looked at the deep religious allegory of it all. And the writers were not intending that.
Yeah. I think I would agree with you. I think that, I mean, I think it's great that you can look into it like that, but it's kind of one of those, I feel like with a lot of movies, sometimes you can always like find something to latch onto. And like, this movie's about, the deprivation of man. And, I think you can always find something in that. So once again, I think if you went to,
I think a film that's written by a committee with studio notes and goes through 10 drafts isn't really about anything philosophically.
Right.
But I will say, but what's great about that is this is just like a little movie that I saw with my parents that I loved growing up, that I don't think that then I got older and I realized other people also loved it. And then you find out it's like universally adored. It was critically acclaimed. It's got all these people that talk about it and debate it and discuss it. And it makes this a great movie that I just thought was this little comedy with the guy from Ghostbusters that I liked, that I saw in the early 90s. And it has this whole other life that I didn't realize until I was older that exists.
Yeah, I completely agree. And kind of even though I knew a lot about this film already, kind of doing some research, like the BAFTA award, like completely threw me off. Cause like you, I kind of assumed the same thing. Like I never, it being like one of the top grossing films of that year, I would have never guessed, but
it's such a tight screenplay. Like it deserves that win. It presents the information well. I mean, Schindler's List also came out in '93, but
I know I should have thrown that in. That like Groundhog Day beat Schindler's List for best screenplay. So, those British, they just they're like, what hits close to home? Was it World War II that affected our country for the rest of time, or was it about?
We're not giving anything to that Irish Liam Neeson.
Exactly. Oh, we got off. Oh, okay. Kind of putting back to the serious thing. Through all that, me finding it just being funny and all the silly scenes, I will say it still kind of hits me now. Just the montage of his interactions with the homeless man.
Oh, that scene always resonated with me. That there's some things he just can't fix, and there's some
Yeah.
things that are just inevitable. And this man was going to die on that day, and there's nothing that he could do about it. He was just fated to die, right?
Yeah.
So that always struck with me. But I don't know. That's one of those scenes that always, or those sections that always elevated the movie to me a little bit. And I wondered in that final day, when what is his interaction with the man in the final day? Did he give him the money in his pocket to just give him a good day, or what time is he spending with this guy where, as opposed to going and saving the kid falling out of the tree, or these things that he realizes he can control. So I think I like that. And it's me, so I'm going to talk about the play. The play gets a little bit more into the darker side of things, but a play, is also 2.5 hours long or whatever, as opposed to an hour and a half. So they've got to flesh it out quite a bit. So it gets a little more serious with Nancy, with Ned Ryerson, with the old man, and it fits. It really fits there. And it's interesting. This is the first time I'd seen this movie since I saw the stage version, which it was different watching it now. Having that background and really realizing how much breezier this is.
yeah, it is. It is,
and then several characters are much more minor in this, like the two drunk guys.
Oh yeah,
who just have the one scene, who are in the play a lot more. I'm like, oh yeah, these guys are just in this one spot.
So did you have? I kind of mentioned the Ned Ryerson scenes, and where. Is there any other scenes that you've always really liked? Some of your favorites or favorite quotes?
Yeah, I mean, I love the dance scene at the end with him playing the piano and the auction. The old lady saying 2 bits, and the look on Chris Elliott's face, like, oh my gosh, and the most Caucasian scene ever put on film, where they're all jamming out on the piano and the guy's playing the guitar, and you got the piano teacher there twirling her hands, and they're rocking out, man. There's just these middle-aged white people rocking out.
Yeah,
I've always enjoyed anything that Chris Elliott was involved. Like his scenes, I think, are really funny. I always stuck out when he's wearing the Clint Eastwood costume, and Nancy comes by. He's like, ex-girlfriend of mine. Doesn't remember me.
I think Chris Elliott is great in this movie, and also they not that they give him serious stuff to do, but when they have to identify Phil's body in the morgue, it's true to character that he still doesn't say something bad about Phil in that moment. He's a
really great guy. I liked him.
Yeah, but he didn't say, oh, I love him so much. I just thought that was still even the subtle scenes he had, were always really good. But I always remember that sweater he wears throughout this movie for whatever reason.
And I love the scene where he's watching Jeopardy, and he's just answering all the questions, and the old people are sitting there applauding, and he just starts drinking the Jack Daniels straight out of the bottle.
Lakes and rivers for 1,000.
Milky colored from glacial clay when entering Lake Geneva, this river is clear blue upon exiting. Jim?
What is the Rhone?
The Rhone, good for $1,000. You are $500 off the lead right now.
Let's go to Inventors for 200.
So good.
And when the guy says, are you think it'll be an early spring? He's like, I'm predicting March 21st. Well, I think that is actually spring, because that is the kind of stuff that I will say to people.
And I mean, we both have a dark sense of humor, and I do like when he gets into the dark days, and just when he is doing the live shot, and he just the times where he just completely just throws the whole broadcast away. I just love those. It's
a tiny little town in Western Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it's
never gonna end.
Yeah, it's gonna be cold. It's gonna be gray. Oh, and then I also liked where he's in the bowling alley.
I was in the Virgin Islands once. I met a girl. We ate lobster, drank pina coladas. At sunset, We made love like sea otters. That was a pretty good day. Why couldn't I get that day over and over?
And the one that has always stuck with us is the too late for flapjacks. Pulls them over. It's flapjack. Too late for flapjacks.
I wonder if the police force, I'm sure it had been done before, but when he rolls down the window and he starts giving the fast food order, to the cops, I wonder if that started a string of people doing that all the time.
Oh, I hope so. I hope so. And they found out that when they woke up the next day, they were not in their B&B. They were still in prison.
Movie Musings.
This movie musing segment, it's just going to have a theme because this movie just kind of lends itself to it. So it's more like kind of fill in the blanks. So these might be a little tough, but I feel like you're a person that's probably.
Oh, thanks.
What?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. No, but like I feel like you're a person that has thought about what would I do if I lived the same day over and over. So if this was the case for you, I mentioned his Phil's day in the Virgin Islands. If you had one day in your life that you could repeat over and over again, what day would that be?
Wow, that's tough. Maybe one of the days for my honeymoon. That was fun. We took a trip. My wife and I were actually in New York, not because it was New York, but just like that was a great time. Maybe my wife would have to be there. It'd be one of those days.
Right.
I did think about this actually, and all I could think of was what I thought would be maybe common answers and how those would not be the days that I would relive, like my wedding day. Absolutely not. That was stressful and tiring. No way. Like the birth of my kids. Nope. Awful day. Didn't sleep well. Like, nope. No good. So that's no fun. Like New Year's days to me, like New Year's Day where you're just lounging and doing nothing. But then I guess that wouldn't be good because nothing's open. I think that's one of the things about Groundhog Day that's great is because it's just Groundhog Day. Like you do up in the morning, but still all the businesses are open. Like he can go to the bank. There's ladies giving piano lessons, like all of this stuff. So it can't be some day where everything's shut down. And I need to be in a not so remote location. See, this is why I'm terrible at this, because I overanalyze it. Because I'm not just like, I had a great birthday party once and it was a lot of fun. I'm like, no, but I'm gonna need medical attention maybe, and so I'm gonna have to be by a hospital.
Oh, well, I do think one thing this movie gets, like, it definitely would have to be a ideal weather day, because especially here in Oklahoma, we've had some really cold days lately, and I'm definitely in this like phase of, and I like cold weather, and it's just gotten a little too cold for me. And so the weather would definitely have to be nice. That would have to be a criteria, I think, for sure.
Yeah, maybe one of our beach trips, like to Rosemary Beach, just live that day over and over again. To where I have access to that. Like it's nice weather, got access to the beach. I can go golfing if I want. There's also a city there if I want to take some piano lessons.
So we talked a little bit about some of the skills he would develop. So you already got the wood crafting thing down. You had mentioned before this that you're starting to kind of learn how to play the piano, but what is like one skill, if you had the same day over and over, that you think you would really like to develop?
Yeah, I mean, instruments. I would want to master as many instruments as I could, I think. Like, I love that. I also languages. I've never been good at languages, and it's always been a dream of mine to like be able to speak any language. And so I think I would, and I'm not good at it. Like that was never a skill of mine in school. I was always bad at foreign language classes. So I think I'd want, if I had the time, buckle down and do that and master as many instruments as I could master.
I think it would be funny to maybe develop, not that this would be like my first one to go to, but if you learned like true like magic, and then just on those days, just to get the shock value of the people you know in your life. When the hell did he learn how to do that?
I would want to get really good at woodworking, but a lot of those woodworking projects you need to let set for like 20. Like you never able to finish anything. Like I gotta let this stain dry for 24 hours before I can do anything.
That'd be extremely. And you would never get to really rest into like the actual finished work at all.
Yeah, I need to just get into like whittling. Like, it's another toothpick.
Yeah. So what is something, what would you consider yourself as a daring person?
No, in no way.
Okay.
In no way.
So
I'm the most risk adverse person I'll ever meet.
Okay. I don't know. You haven't met, you've met Hallie before, but Hallie and my wife might like beat you on
I would
that
love
way.
to hang out with him. We would all have a pleasant time.
So is there anything that like part of this, like if you had the same date over and over, that you would just go out, like I would try that just because I know I would like live the next day?
Yeah, I would do all the like the skydiving things, those types of things that scare me. They aren't really that daring, right? It's a controlled environment. Like, I mean, I'm not going to say anything bad that I would do, but I would do all of those things. Fill in the blank here. I would armed robbery. That'd be fun to try.
Murder. I mean, like,
sure.
If
we're here, that'd be my luck. That'd be the day the loop stopped.
That could be a movie in itself, is like set up that this person's like, living the same day over and over. They kill somebody, and then the next day they wake up, they still have blood on the hands. So I think that'd be just going from there.
Did you see Happy Death Day?
I didn't, actually.
So to me, that's the really good version of this. So is Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise.
Yeah, I remember liking that one.
But Happy Death Day is like a slasher movie where the girl is caught in the loop. Where she ends up getting murdered every day.
Oh, that's
and
horrible.
She's trying to like solve who it is, But it's like, it's not scary. It's more of a tongue in cheek. Like it's got a fun sense of humor to it. And there's a sequel I didn't watch, but that's a fun watch. To me, that's better than Palm Springs. Happy Death Day.
So my girls have gotten into this thing where they really like to jump out behind doors and scare me.
I saw this video, and they're going to kill your father.
Yeah, they will. Yeah. But like, I mean, that enough gives me like anxiety sometimes. I can't imagine the thought of like, I'm going to get murdered. No matter what.
At what point would you just be like, all right, I'm going to get murdered today? Okay.
Rom-Com Rankings.
Jumping back into this movie and specifically talking about it being as a rom-com, I was trying really hard to not talk about Andie MacDowell here as Rita. And so we did a good job kind of skirting that. So, I mean, I know we both have watched Four Weddings and a Funeral not too long ago, not together, but we both were not impressed really by her, more so her character in that.
She's pretty bad in that movie.
Yeah. So what would you give the romantic chemistry between Phil and Rita here? And we can maybe lead into a little discussion about how we feel about Andie MacDowell in this movie.
Yeah, I don't know if Bill Murray. I think he's got better chemistry. I was going to say, I don't know how well Bill Murray has romantic chemistry with anybody because he's so abrasive and he doesn't really let anybody in. I'd say the best version of romantic chemistry is Sigourney Weaver in the Ghostbusters movie.
I agree.
Back to him. And I don't know if Andie MacDowell has that speed as much. I mean, she plays off of him and I like her in this. I think she's very good in this. I love that character, and I think it's fun, and she plays it well, and I think it's sweet, and I think they're okay together. But I wouldn't say their chemistry is off the charts. I don't think that's her fault. I'd say it's probably more his fault than anything, because I think she's very good. It's a lovable character, like the optimism, but not too much like squishy optimism. Like she still doesn't have time for his crap. It does always bug me at the end of the movie when he tells her he loves her, and she's fine with it.
Yeah.
Like her reaction should be the exact same as it was midway through the movie when he tells her he loves her, and she's like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Because they've had even less of a nice day together that last day. She's just more impressed with him from afar,
right?
Like they don't have quality interactions. She's just like, "Oh, look at this guy. He's just suddenly become the person that I'm." Meets all those qualities. So yeah, chemistry, it's fine. It's better than a lot of movies, but it's not his best chemistry with someone. It's better than her chemistry with Hugh Grant. I'll give it that.
Yeah. So I ultimately gave it 2.5. I was kind of right in the middle. Is that what you would give it, or
is it out of 5?
Out of 5, yeah.
I'd give it 3.
3.
I'd give it a 3.
Yeah.
She holds her own against him, and she's just so damn adorable.
Yes, yeah. And I don't know if partially is that we talked about like when we first saw this movie, and forever this was the only thing I ever knew Andy McDowell was in, and so I always liked the movie, therefore I always liked her in it. And so like you, she does feel, I mean, obviously like beautiful, but she does feel very true to life.
Yeah, I mean, and she can wear a vest that's decorated like a couch cushion.
Yeah,
with the best of them.
Yeah, but if you've ever met a television producer, no television producer, especially from news, is that laid back as she is. And like go to the flow. I like when he's like, even when he's nice about like, hey, I talked to so and so, and the shot should go over here, and she's like, okay, great. I was like, no producer would ever do that. But anyway, but yeah, yeah, I kind of like you. You do see why she like finally into him because of that day. Like, oh, this can lead somewhere. But the jumps, like you talked about, like even when they leave and he's like, we're gonna live here. And it's like I'd be like, whoa.
Yeah, listen, psycho. We just met.
I mean, this is a cute town and all, but yeah. So the second category is a little hard, like the best friend. I don't know. There's really, I don't know if you could put Chris Elliott's character in here. I mean,
it has to be, right? Yeah, I was thinking about that when I was watching it because I knew you were going to ask me these. I don't think this movie has a best friend.
No,
I mean, he's the closest thing, and you'd have to put it at like a 1. I mean, because nobody fills an island unto himself, right? There's no one that he bounces anything off of. Because he is the godlike character at the center of this that it's all happening to.
Yeah. I will say the ultimate where I kind of coming from this communications video production world, when Phil like offers to actually carry his camera, I mean, that is a huge thing. Like talent would never do such a thing. But I've also met a lot of cameramen, and if you dared touch their camera, they would like go nuts on you. So that's kind of like a weird little thing there. But yeah,
are they still referred to as talent? Because that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. As they're the only ones with talent that are involved in that production.
Yeah. I think even when we did even kind of even the nonprofit, like a lot of volunteers and stuff like that, it's almost like it's like an adage. You're like, oh, the talent, just that's the person in front of the camera. But
it's that they get egos.
How does that happen? They have green rooms where they, get to have snacks and powder for their noses. Yeah, I wonder how that happens. But yeah, I'm comfortable with a kind of a not available for this category. You're good with that?
Yeah, I will say that the green room at we're here at Nathan's headquarters at his office building in downtown Oklahoma City. The green room is nice here. It is nice.
I know how to treat my guests with style, so
I'm assuming parking will be validated.
Of course. Yeah, especially in Oklahoma City. You were here recently. You saw how easy it is to park in this town. You can we went to a Thunder game the other night, and just guess how much we paid for parking, and we didn't have to walk too far to get to the stadium.
$20.
10. Yeah. Okay, so I was through so when I got into Spotify and to search the soundtrack, like usually you can't find them And if
Right.
they do exist on Spotify, there's a lot of like songs that are grayed out. Somehow Spotify has this official soundtrack, and all the tracks are on this soundtrack. So I don't know. We watched this rather quickly. I didn't know if you had a chance to listen to the soundtrack at all.
Yeah, I started listening to it this afternoon while I was working, and so I got the main
Just
like
yeah.
songs, and then I tried to listen to it in the car with my kids while I was taking them to after school activities, and they were like, "What is this? We want to listen to something else." So I got the gist of it. I'm like, okay, it's mostly the score. There's some of the standards that they've got that they put in here. Yeah.
Yeah. So I ultimately gave it a 2. Now I will say the opening song and kind of closes rolls in the end credits. Weatherman. That song, like, just kind of a nostalgic feel to that song.
There's a good like on the nose songs where it like talks about one day at a time or I'm your weatherman.
Yeah.
And it gets knocked down a little bit for me because it's got like the aggressive tuba music that like Curb Your Enthusiasm type music, and I've never once in my life found music that's supposed to be funny
Right.
Just that's never happened. There's never been a and I've been like, oh man, that's really adding something to this. So yeah, I don't really care about the score, and I don't want to talk about it at the soundtrack. What I want to talk about is the Broadway musical, and I'm saying that is probably 4 out of 5. You should just go listen to the musical instead.
Okay.
It's way better.
Okay. All right. So for your brief listening experience to this one, what would you rate it?
I don't know. 2, 1.5.
Yeah.
Like the songs are fine. The score is completely forgettable. It's
Yeah.
not gonna none of this. For the fact that the score it's serviceable, right? It conveys the emotion of the scene, but it blends into the background. None of these themes are going to end up on my movie soundtrack playlist that I listen to while I'm working.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it just kind of like the soundtrack to this was it is the literal movie. Like it's funny how it ebbs and flows. I will say, famously, "I Got You, Babe," right? That plays Alarm Clock. I think this was probably my first time to actually listen to the whole song, like from start to finish. Yeah, and so I completely understand why they picked "I Got You, Babe" for this movie. It was the perfect song to it just symbolize because it being a pretty repeatable song in itself.
You were in a big fan of the Sonny and Cher comedy hour or whatever their variety show was.
It just that came on way past my bedtime, growing up. So
you're more of a Mr. Tambourine Man.
Yeah.
Fan.
So the last category, and this one's kind of a little hard too, because I've always said it's the chase scene or declaration of love. So this one, I don't think there's really a chase scene, but I do think Phil has these 2 big declarations of love. One you had mentioned where she like kind of tries to stay awake, to see what happens, and and he kind of talks to her while she's sleeping. And I would say a little bit kind of towards the end too in their last date. But how did you view this category?
Well, I'd say a couple of things. I'd say one of the declarations of love to me would be where he's trying to convince her that he's living this day over and over again, and he tells her how well he knows her.
Yes.
And he's like, you like boats but not the ocean, and he goes into all of that. Like,
yeah.
That's really he's confessing his love for her, and he's realized how wonderful she is. So you have that. But one of the great things about this movie, and I think what makes us think, well, it's not really a rom-com, is that it doesn't have these tropes. There's no big flashy declaration of love moment, or there's the declaration of love is that he becomes a better person. It doesn't have those tropes that water the genre down, and it doesn't fit in that box. It's just what makes it so great. So for a declaration of love, hell, I'll give it a 5 because it doesn't have one. It dare I say, deftly and works it into the story instead of just putting him on a soapbox and have him scream it at the camera.
Yep. I completely agree. Just the moments we talked about. I just think from a dialogue perspective, just amazing amazing writing. I just,
Yeah.
I just, they're not, they feel genuine, not sappy. What you just said, just being on a soapbox, a perfect way to say that, and even this movie, just little buttons. It has, like when they wake up and it's the next day, the third, and he just says it was the end of a very long day. Those little things, those type of lines could be overly cheesy, but they actually are work and really smart and funny and cute and all the things. So yeah.
Well, the one that really stuck out to me was he's at the bowling alley with the two drunks, and he's like, "You're living the same day, doing the same thing, repeating, and nothing matters." And the one guy goes, "Sounds about right to me," or whatever. And like, I got that when I'm older, that these guys are living that life in this small town over and over. Like, as I'm little, I was a kid that just whoo right over my head.
Yeah.
But like, I love those kind of lines.
Yeah. Which leads, I think I accidentally said the declaration of love was the last category. The last category is actually rewatchability, which leads into that. I mean, I think it's fair. I mean, mine's 5 hearts. I assume that's the same for you.
Yeah, I mean, for a movie that's all about a time loop, I mean, this movie could live in a time loop in my life. I watch it over and over again, and I have. Like, I can't believe it's been so long since I've seen it.
Yeah, and you had kind of mentioned just the runtime of it, and just it moves, and I think like if you came into the living room and it was playing, you get caught up in the scene and you're like, oh wait, this is coming up, and you would want to watch that, and so yeah.
Nate, why don't they make movies that are an hour and a half long anymore?
I don't know, because you're paying so much money now, you have to feel like you're getting the experience,
$27 for my 4D experience. I need to have them throwing popcorn in my face for an hour, for 3.5 hours.
I would have loved to be on this movie set. These type of movies kind of fascinate me, and like how they make them, because clearly I would think, if like the snowball fight that we're talking about, you shoot all that at the same time, but being able like for the actors to kind of stay in the moment of like where they need to be, like this type of movie really kind of fascinates me to see it. Like I bet it was so fun to cut it together. Like,
well, I mean, yeah, the logistics of that. You think about the main set piece of like the town square where Punxsutawney Phil is. How many times we go there, in how many different situations, like throughout the movie, where he is in the time loop, and like, I'm sure they filmed all those at once, not at once, but over. Like they didn't keep building that set over, like the logistical nightmare, and then editing it all together. And I don't know, you say fun, that's your come from your editor background, that sounds like a nightmare to me.
I just think it could be really fun because I'm sure there's a lot on the cutting room floor as far as takes and stuff, but just kind of like figuring out like when to jump from this, when he's figuring out her drink order, just especially those scenes, I think are great. I
mean, it's the bartender, right? The bartender made all this happen because he keeps looking over knowingly at them, like he's the only other person that knows Phil's doing this over and over again.
Yeah. Do you think Chris Elliott's character Larry, like, he gets that look from the bartender as well? Do you think maybe he's the next one to get into the loop?
He's next. He's gonna fall in love with Nancy. He's gonna woo Nancy.
I think he has a steeper hill to climb than Phil did with Rita.
He's got a hand. A little bit more of the handicap going into it, I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, clearly a movie. I mean, I don't. It's safe to say I don't think we're the ones being totally out there about saying this is like amazing, great movie, but it'll be interesting to see by the end of this kind of where it falls on the rom-com list. But definitely if you haven't seen it, definitely watch it. Although I will say I'm glad I owned it because right now it's not streaming anywhere unless
I was shocked because it was
it
was fairly recently, and I plopped down to watch it the other night. I'm like, I gotta dig this thing out of my hard drive and plug my computer into my TV. Come on, man.
I know. They're just finding ways just to make us angry. It's like they had like, it's like it's like your parents as a kid offering you like a bag of candy and then just ripping. That's what all these streaming networks did. Like they were like, here's everything, all the movies you could ever want, and all of them have started pulling them off their streaming services now. So they're like,
Oh yeah,
that's a little expensive to do that.
December 26th, Home Alone's gone off Disney Plus. You won't see that thing until December 1st of this, next year.
Recommendations.
So you have famously have said on this podcast before, you have a hard time kind of watching a lot of new things or anything, but over the holidays, is there anything that you were able to see that you've been recommending people to check out or listening to or reading?
Reading. I started, I'll tell you what I got genuinely excited for. And I watched the first episode on last Sunday. So there's only one episode out so far.
Okay.
It's the new season of True Detective, Night Country.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I've heard
starring Jodie Foster.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved the first season of True Detective. I didn't watch the second because everyone said it was bad. I liked the third, but I'm not 100% sure I finished it through no fault of the shows. And so I love Jodie Foster, and I like the concept. Like, I love a good procedural that's maybe more than a procedural. And so I was genuinely excited for it. And I think that's a fascinating setting. Anything, kind of set up in Alaska, Arctic Circle area. And the first episode was like, I'm hooked. So it's great. Okay. It's they do a good job. It's a lot of shoe leather in the first one, introducing you to the characters and the setting and all that, and it's done really well. And I'm excited for the potential this season. So that's my big recent thing that I've watched that wasn't Groundhog Day.
Yeah. Do they jump in timelines a lot at all, or is it more linear?
So far, this one's linear.
Okay.
I've literally, this one existed in the same couple days.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah. No, I'm finishing up Fargo, which I know is a very different show than True Detective, but also involves a lot of murder. And so that might be a good one to pick up after I finish Fargo, because that finale just aired. So I was going to actually text you about this show, but I kind of actually thought this might be better podcast material to talk about, because I'm a little interested in what you think. But my recommendation, kind of a surprise, is actually Ted, the TV series on Peacock that I've started. I feel like in college we watched Family Guy together, and I feel like you kind of liked Seth MacFarlane, but now you don't. Is that wrong?
No, I loved Family Guy, and we did watch that. I think that's back when it wasn't even on the air. Like, you had to watch.
We had the DVDs. You
had DVDs of it, or you had to get on LimeWire, and you'd get a couple episodes. It would ruin your computer downloading those episodes. No, I loved Family Guy. I watched it a lot. I mean, I've outgrown it.
Yes,
for sure. I loved the Orville that he did, which is like his Star Trek.
Yeah, I
really
never watched it. Yeah,
like the best Star Trek on TV was the Orville for a couple of years, and there were Star Trek shows on TV. Says the Star Trek nerd. And his movies, I love the first Ted. I thought it was really funny. I actually rewatched it a couple months ago.
Oh, okay.
It was still pretty funny. So I want to check that out. That's just one of those. I don't have that streaming service. Like, I've drawn a line in the sand at my streaming services. But no, I think he's funny enough.
Peacock, they had during Black Friday, they had a deal for like $20 for the year. So like I got it, which I was like glad, because I was able to watch the Chiefs Dolphins game and not worry about like it.
Oh,
like
we were so
else.
angry. We were so angry when we realized.
So anyway, it's just my recommendation, because like I know I saw the original movie when it came out, like one that was like funny enough, and it's my recommendation because it's just a show that makes me laugh, and it is just a comedy. And for me, it feels like it's been a while when there's just been like a comedy that's funny, and so I've just enjoyed throwing it on, and just like, it has the dark humor that I enjoy. And now if you don't like if you didn't like Ted the movie, you will not like this show. I will also say if I have a criticism of it, the first episode, the pilot, is a little longer than the rest, but they all run over 30 minutes, which I'm like, why is each episode like 45 minutes? It does not need to be that long.
A comedy show should be 30 minutes long.
Right. So, and I saw an article today of like how much visual effects work that Seth MacFarlane had to do for this show, because it's so long, the episodes. Yeah. But it makes me laugh. So if it's just been a good show lately to just kind of unwind after some stressful weeks, like at work and stuff. So anyway,
well, if I ever stumble upon a Peacock password, or what was it on Paramount? Which one is it even on? Peacock?
It's Peacock, yeah.
I'll check it out.
Okay. Yeah, awesome. Well, I just want to thank you again for joining me. Hopefully you'll come back for some more now that I gave you a good movie to watch. So,
I'm excited. Yeah, it can happen, guys. Dreams do come true, everybody.
Yeah.
And your friends.
Yeah, and I did mention I always like to mention your podcast, Second Best Picture. You can always listen to it wherever you listen to your podcast. Easy to find. What's your next film?
Yeah, we took a hiatus over the holidays because we were both traveling and things. So we'll be back in a week or so with The Queen.
Oh,
Helen
okay.
Mirren's The Queen. Yeah, we're finishing up 2006, which I think is about where we were the last time I was on this, but. Yeah, we had to take a few months off. We just had too much going on, and but we'll be back in a couple weeks with that.
Awesome. I remember I saw that film, I think around when it came out. I don't remember much about it. I do remember one that I liked it, I enjoyed it, and two, I just remember a big thing with like a deer. That's the big thing.
Yeah, there's like a stag. Well, and it's crazy. Like Netflix has been trying to capitalize on the fact that we're doing this movie, and they did a whole series about, like, their whole last series of The Crown was about this entire event that we're going to be covering in this. So it's nice of them to try to cross promote with us.
Yeah, very, very generous of them. I mean, because they need you more than you need them, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yes. So remember, you can visit moviesairlife.com for all our episode reviews and more. You can find all the episodes that Kyle has been on, and so where you can hear him be a little bit more bitter and angry with me. So, but
a more natural state,
right? Your more Phil state, so to speak. But yeah, if you love this podcast, please take a moment to rate and review it. Always helps us with finding new listeners. Thanks again, Kyle. And remember, you got me, babe.
Oh, I got you, babe. Thanks, man. I really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, take care.